So when we talk about international marketing, we have to think about what that market is. Going into that market, what does that market mean? We discuss the culture and the changes, and things are different in the target market than they are in your market, right? So you have to adapt. You know that expression, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. You have to adapt your strategy to that target market. That's the best way of doing that. So the most important thing I think you have to think in mind when going into an international market is that macro, what we call the macro environment, right? The macro environment's important. And how do we think of the macro environment? Well, we think of the legal, the political, the economic, the social, cultural, the technology, and the internet, right? The internet of things. That's important. You remember that by remembering El Pest. That's sort of how you understand that concept. I changed it around a little bit. I call it, and I trademarked I slept. I just moved it around a little bit. But I thought the internet is a big part of the global economy now, right? Without the internet, you really don't know what your global business is, because the internet has brought us together, but yet it also created a competitive disadvantage in some cases. So let's talk about that for a minute. The legal part. Laws of the land will dictate what gets done in each international market. So when you develop a strategy, and we'll talk about the product, the four P's, and the strategy of who, what, where, when, and all that. You have to think of the legal environment. What are the laws of the land? What laws do you have to research and understand to make sure that you're focused on doing your business? So that's the first thing you should dive into. After you know what product is, you have to think about the laws of the land, because like in the case of the U.S. laws, we talked about the cannabis laws. That's federally, that's against the law, but in some states you can. But you can't bring cannabis in from another country, because that would be against the law, obviously, right? You can't bring drugs into this country because it's against the law. So there are basic laws of each country that you have to follow and understand. So that's the first thing you should really dive into when you're thinking about an international plan. Does my product is my product legal to bring into the country? And if not, what are the opportunities in the law? Because if it's illegal, you can't even do business in the U.S. So that's the first place to start. The next place you need to go to is the political risks. So any country has political risk. Now the U.S., if you're bringing the product into the U.S., like I said, is more stable. Okay, we might have a different president every 4 years. We might have even a different political party every 2 or every 4 years in charge. But that political party might have preferences on how they move the law, but it takes time to put a law into action, and you need a majority in most cases. You need a majority vote to pass laws. Okay, so laws in the U.S. don't change so rapidly. They do change, but it takes some time. And normally, if you're entering into the U.S. market, you could research what laws are changing that will affect your product or your service. Okay, so that is easy to research. That's not very complicated. You could just do a quick online search to see how laws are changing. You can go into public information. Public information will tell you what laws are changing. Now, in some countries, that's a little more complicated to do. Some countries have future laws on the books. Some countries you might be able to research the newspaper. And when I say research, you have to do all kinds of different research here. So you have to look at newspaper. You have to look at government websites. You have to look at competition. You really have to get a holistic view of what's happening in the marketplace to understand how to launch your product, because you don't want to be caught off guard on the legal ramifications of trying to get into a marketplace, right? So the two big things are legal and political, and they tie together, because if the politics change, the laws will change. Make sense? So you really have to get a handle on what's happening in that target market from a political point of view, and then from a legal point of view. That's really where you start the discussion about getting into an international market. Forget about, my product is great and the consumers in that target market are going to love the product. Forget about that for a second. Even if they would, you have to understand the politics and the laws of the land, right? That's going to be important. The next bucket that you have to look at is the economic bucket. An economy changes in every country, right? The economy in the U.S. changes all the time. Right now in 2020, the economy in the U.S. is pretty strong. But in 2008 to 2010, 2011, the economy wasn't that strong. Now, let's say you want to target Brazil. Is the economy strong in Brazil right now? Right? It goes through ups and downs. Let's say you want to target Europe. You have to look at the economy depending upon the country that you're trying to target in Europe. So understanding the economy, and then you have to sort of forecast the economy, whether or not the economy is going to be good or bad in that market too. That's important to know. Do you want to launch a product in a country where the economy is predicted to be bad in the next 3 to 5 years? Probably not. Because why would you make an investment in that country if you know the economy is going to be bad? That wouldn't make any sense. So if you knew, and it's hard to know that, it's hard to forecast, right? No one's a wizard, no one's a magician. You can look at economic data and economic trends to sort of predict where things are going. As a marketer, you have to do that research. You have to understand that some countries are destined based upon what is setting up legally and politically. Some countries are destined for a bad economy. And there are economists out there that you could research and understand what's happening in the economy and see what you think is going to happen in that economy. So the three things you have to start with are legal, political, and economic, because without those three buttoned up, without an understanding of those three, it's going to be hard to be successful in a market. We're going to come to the product. We're going to come to the target market. We're going to come to all that. Okay, you have to have all that understood. But let's say you have the greatest product in the world. You could have the greatest product in the world. If the law of the land is going to change, that doesn't allow your product to be sold there. If the politics are destined to change in that country, if the economy is destined to be bad in that country, it doesn't matter how good your product is. It doesn't matter. You took Professor Ken's international marketing class. You got the best strategy in the world. None of that matters if those three things change. It doesn't matter. None of those things matter, right? And then also in that macro understanding, you have, and I'll move this down. It doesn't really say that there, but I'll move that down to like this section over here. You have to understand the culture, the society, right? Is the culture changing? Is society changing so that you have a good opportunity in that marketplace? Let's say you have a product, Professor Ken's miracle water. You drink this water and it helps you live a longer life to 100 years old, right? There's a mountain, I think in the hills of Peru, Valacqua, I think is the name of the town, where the water comes in from the top of the mountains, and if you drink that water, they studied those people, they live to 100 years old in this village, and they say, yes, it's the altitude, it's what they eat, their diet, but it also is the water they drink that makes them live to 100 years old. So now we have this water. It's an incredible water. It helps you live to 100 years old. And we bring it in. What if we take it to a country where the culture says, you know what, you can't change your destiny. It's against our culture to try to make you live longer. That's artificial. You can't do that. Now, I don't think there's a culture out there that would not allow that. But what if there was? What if there was a place where they told you, we don't want you to live to 100 years old. We want you to die naturally. Okay? And now as population grows, we might actually see that, not in our lifetime, but we might see that in the future lifetime where, we control the population. We know that some countries have done that already, or at least we know in China they control the population well, with the one-child policy, that was part of it, right? So there is a change. So you have to look at social and cultural norms. We talked about that a little bit. How does that affect your strategy, your international marketing plan? And then there's also technology. And when I talk about technology, I'm not talking about the hard drive. I'm not talking about the computers. I'm not talking about all that. Technology could be part of infrastructure. Infrastructure has to be good in order for you to be strong in that marketplace. It could be the technology of how you do business, right? Right now, there's international labor laws on the books, but there are some countries that children work, whether it's legal or not legal. Um, you could have child labor laws on the books, but maybe in the future, though that child labor is replaced by the way we produce items, the efficiency of things, or robots, right? We have robots that are out there that are coming out right now. AI, artificial intelligence, all that is technology or a better way to make a product. And it could be hard technology. Maybe um, we have workers in a factory that are making a product by hand, but perhaps something gets invented that workers still have to use, but it's a tool that they use that eliminates 2 or 3 jobs. And that technology, as long it could be hard technology, it could be simple technology, but it changes the way something is produced. So you have to understand the way technology changes things. And then the last piece of this is the Internet of Things. How is the internet changing the way we do business today? We know that it's connecting us from a global level. We know globally the internet connects us. But does that increase our competition or decrease our competition? What does the internet do for us or doesn't do for us? How does it hurt us? How does it help us? That's really important when we talk about the Internet of Things and the internet technology. Okay? So as you think about the international product, we're going to come back to targeting and all that here in a minute. I think the first thing you have to have in your head are what are the legal opportunities, what are the political opportunities, what are the economic opportunities, and then you have to look at society and the cultures, you have to look at technology, and you have to look at the internet. Those macro conditions could change your business strategy immediately. It could take you out of business very quickly. So think of it in those terms first. Okay, that's where you start. That's why I put on the board. These are some important things that I just want to go through now, and then we'll go through the exact plan. Okay, I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee here. Any questions on that piece yet?
This is going to be based on the product or project that we've been working on?
This is going to be the project or service that you're working on. You can use, so the question would be,